We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Wednesday night edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We got a lot to talk about here for the middle of the week in the middle of July. Yeah, we got ourselves a jam-packed episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. Here's what you need to know about today's show. We're going to open. Listen, the last day or so feels like there's a lot of talk about NCAA tournament expansion. Obviously, I am one of many that thinks it is idiotic and stupid. We will explain why, no, we should not be expanding the NCAA tournament. From there, thought it was interesting. Arkansas, John Calipari had a open practice to the media availability on Wednesday. And I'll say this, just listen to John Calipari. It seems like he is awfully confident with his 2025-2026 roster. So we'll break down what he said and what it means for the season ahead. Then we'll switch gears to football because Big 12 media days have officially kicked off talking season. I think there was a couple interesting things out of Big 12 media days. Brett Yormark, the commissioner, thinks they're getting 2 teams into the college football playoff. Is he crazy? By the way, did you see what Scott Frost said about Nebraska? Yeah, it was not pretty for the alum, for the former coach, and of course the national championship winning quarterback. It was not pretty, so we will discuss all of that. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We really do appreciate your support. We are full speed ahead into football. We'll obviously be covering basketball as stuff pops up. So make sure that you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Also, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you do want to support the show, make sure to download episodes of the podcast as well. Before we get started, we do have one other entity to thank, if you will, and that is our friends. That is our partners. That is Callie Puffs and CalliePuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you all about Callie Puffs for the last year or so. We've been working with Callie Puffs, but bottom line is it's summertime. We are at that time of year where you're walking around with your shirt off at the lake, at the beach, at the pool, while you're mowing your lawn. I don't even want to know where else you got your shirt off, but you don't want to look like a filthy slob, okay? So you need a snack that is both healthy but delicious. That is where Callie Puffs comes in, okay? So this is the alternative to the crap in your grocery aisle. You don't need Doritos. You don't need Fritos. You need Callie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But the best part is they taste delicious. This is a small family-owned company. You want to support family-owned companies, you could do that as well. You know what actually is the best part about Callie Puffs, though? It's not just that they're healthy. It's not just that they're delicious. It's that they're giving special deal to listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. This is all you got to do. You want to try Callie Puffs out for yourself. Maybe you've been thinking about trying, but you're really not sure. All you got to do is go to CalliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, CalliePuffs.com. You can get 15% off your purchase when you use code Torres. You buy 1 bag, you buy 100 bags, does not matter. 15% off your purchase when you use the promo code Torres. They're also available, by the way, on Amazon.com. So maybe you got a cart already open, throw some Callie Puffs in, try them, but you want that 15% discount. Go to CalliePuffs.com, use promo code Torres at checkout. With that said, it is a busy middle of the week here in July. There is no more time to waste, so let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, a lot of stuff going on in the world of college sports. As I mentioned, Big 12 Media Days has already started. SEC Media Days is next week. But there is one thing quietly going on behind the scenes in the world of college sports that literally impacts every single person who loves college sports, and it is going on quietly in Savannah, Georgia, where, how about this? We have a meeting of the Division I men's basketball committee. Now, many of you are probably sitting there saying, Torres, why does this matter to me? Why should I care? It is because there's a couple things on the agenda, but the one that matters to you, the one that certainly matters to me, is that there is real talk that we could expand the NCAA tournament, and we're actually going to get some sort of resolution on this by the end of the week. So we're recording here Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Transparently, by the time you listen to this, we could have NCAA tournament expansion. We've spent all summer talking about the college football playoff, but let's get into the NCAA tournament because this thing is kind of a disaster. Like I don't think anybody really feels like we need NCAA tournament expansion or that we want it. So let's just go ahead and dive into a wild story, a dumb story that has kind of picked up steam here over the last couple of days. First of all, let's give credit where it's due. Matt Norlander from CBS Sports, super plugged in, truly great reporter. I'm kind of one of those guys. I'm not really worried about the day-to-day minutia of everything. Just when something happens, we're going to come on here and we're going to talk about it, okay? Well, I bring it up because Matt put out a story about 2-3 days ago basically saying, hey, NCAA tournament expansion is very much on the docket. And I think that kind of woke up people to like how close that we could conceivably be to this thing happening. The expansion could go to 72 teams or to 76. So we could potentially be adding 4 more teams or potentially even 8 more teams to an already, in my opinion, bloated field. But I give Norlander credit because he put out a story and then immediately it was like a dog whistle, basically, for lack of a better term, for the rest of the media. So Pat Forty from CBS Sports, or from Sports Illustrated, put out an article saying that he's against tournament expansion. Saw Dan Wetzel from ESPN put out an article saying he's against tournament expansion. And so you just go on and on down the list. I'll just be blunt. We will find out in the coming days and maybe hours if we're getting tournament expansion, but I hate it. And really, it's for all of the obvious reasons. Let's dive into why this is a terrible idea, why I hate it, and why, transparently, I think most of you probably hate it as well, okay? So first off, why do we hate tournament expansion? I think the biggest reason is nobody actually wants it, okay? And so here's the thing with me and what I do, you guys and what you do and how you listen and consume this show, right? Is that I do think there are times where I have to remove my own personal opinion about a topic and instead kind of look at the broader scene, what everybody wants. Am I on an island on a topic? I'll give you an example, right? College football playoff expansion. I actually thought we were good at 4. I didn't really think we needed to go to 12. I thought it would devalue the regular season. I think transparently, 16 or 14 or whatever is going to make it worse. But I also understand that I was very much in the minority on the idea of college football playoff expansion being a bad thing. Most of you want it. And while I still don't personally love it, I understand if you're an Indiana fan, how awesome it was to see your name in that 12-team bracket last year. Even a Tennessee fan. Tennessee is a great program with great history, finished 3rd in the SEC last year. They don't get into a 4-team field. They get into a 12-team field. So I bring it up because while I personally disagree with, say, college football playoff expansion, I understand why it was done, and I understand why I'm in the minority. I bring it up to say, I don't want to say literally nobody wants college NCAA tournament expansion, but it's a very, very, very short list, okay? So let me give credit to my buddy Rob Douster, Field of 68, on Twitter on Wednesday. Just put out a poll just to kind of get the vibes of people out there. At last check, it was 94-6. By the way, producer Matt, you did not click yes on this poll, did you? The question is, are you in favor of tournament expansion? 94% of people said no. 6% said yes. Okay, listen, I'm not a mathematician. Let me ask you a question. Can we get 94% agreement on any topic on planet Earth right now? If I did a poll, is the sky blue? I don't think we could get 94% of people to agree. Is grass green? Is water wet? 94% of people said they don't want NCAA tournament expansion. So one, this is not something that people are clamoring for. This is not something that people want. And instead, it's quite the opposite. The vast, vast majority of people actually do not want it and actually think it's a bad idea. So that's one. Two, let me add this. This is the real reason why I hate the idea of tournament expansion. It takes something that everyone loves and inherently makes it worse. Okay, and Matt, this is where you could clip off our 2-minute clip here because I think this is the important part. It takes something that everybody loves and inherently makes it worse. What do I mean by that? Well, listen, whether you're a huge college hoops fan, whether you're not a huge college hoops fan, whatever, what is the single best part about being a broader, bigger picture college basketball fan, not being a Kentucky fan or a UConn fan or a Tennessee fan or a BYU fan or whatever? It is that Thursday and Friday of the NCAA tournament, we have those 4 current play-in games, and you get to Thursday and Friday, and you and your buddies take time off of work. You go to the bar, you go to the casino, you're betting on games all day, you're watching games all day, and even if you're not, you know what you're doing? You're sitting there with your wife, you're sitting there with your kids, you're sitting there with your grandkids. You're filling out a bracket competing against each other, okay? And while obviously we're still at some point going to get to 64 teams, you add 8 teams to this bracket, now all of a sudden you're going to what? 8 play-in games? All of a sudden you're trying to figure out, okay, well, these 8 results all impact, how many, think about it. These 8 results now impact the main bracket. Like, what are we even talking about here? And so now all of a sudden there are real games with real implications on Tuesday, Wednesday, and it just screws up the integrity of the bracket. The more games that you add, the less value is on Thursday and Friday in that field of 64. It makes it more confusing. It makes it less consumable. And oh, by the way, here's the other thing. It makes an already I don't want to say irrelevant because I love college basketball. You love college basketball. But a regular season that struggles to get interest in it, it makes it less valuable, right? Because say what you want about college. I love college basketball, but I know that most people don't watch game in and game out, night in and night out in college basketball. I know that we struggle to get eyeballs on this sport in November, December, January, and February. Well, now all of a sudden you're letting 8 more teams into the field. It makes an already watered down regular season even worse. Just think about the fact we had 14 teams from the SEC in the NCAA tournament last year, okay? Do we need more games? Do we need more teams? Do we need more expansion? Was there some SEC team that I missed that got left out? Like, what are we even talking about? And so I just think as we get deeper into this world that we live in, sports in general is more about events, moment of things that you have to watch, okay? That's why the NFL remains popular. Your team only plays once a week, and they only play 17 times a year, and every game matters. It's the same with college football. It's not the same with the NBA. Your team plays 82 games. Your own star players are telling you every single game doesn't matter. I love Major League Baseball. I don't have to watch 162 games to know what's going on, and it's the same with college basketball. So now you're letting 8 more teams in, and all of a sudden it makes the regular season less valuable. By the way, for fun, I went back and looked it up. You know who was the first team left out of the NCAA tournament last year? Indiana, as in a team that had already fired its coach was the first team. So think about that. Just basic fundamentals. A team that fired its coach because they sucked so much, that's the truth, that's the reality, would have been in the field, and that is the team that we're fighting to get in the field that was not currently in it. It makes no sense. And so to me, I absolutely, positively do not think we're leaving out teams that are good enough to get in. And finally, that leads me to the most important point. Like the logic of expanding, that's the funny part. It doesn't make sense. Again, go back to the college football playoff, okay? I'm not saying it's a perfect system. I'm not saying that I even like it, but the logic made sense. You get more teams from more conferences, more teams late in the season have games that matter. And oh, by the way, there's more meaningful games in December and January. Well, the bottom line with college basketball NCAA tournament expansion, let's just think about this realistically as adults. Okay, first of all, the team, like, we're not adding more. There's not going to be teams that are 16 and 15 where all of a sudden their fans are super invested because they might be the 73rd team in and now they're out. You know what those fans are doing? They're checked out. they probably hate their team because their team keeps losing, and they're ready for the offseason to see who they're going to get in the portal. Are they going to fire their coach? Are they going to do whatever? Again, go back to Indiana. Yes, I know Indiana fans would have been happy to be in the tournament. I think a lot of them were just like, get this crappy season over with, get this coaching staff out of here, and let's start figuring out what our roster looks like for the 25-26 season. You go to other teams that were on the bubble. I'm just trying to think off the top of it doesn't really matter. By the way, Nebraska was on the bubble. Nebraska didn't even qualify for the Big Ten tournament. And so that's my fundamental issue with this, is that the logic doesn't even make sense. The logic is it gives everyone more access to the field. Well, yeah, when you expand everything, there's more access. But who are we leaving out? Like, who are we leaving out that is deserving? And then from the access component, what makes March Madness, what makes the NCAA tournament completely unique to every other sport in America — I can't speak to every other sport globally, but in America, every team enters March with a chance to win a national championship. Every team isn't going to win it, but it doesn't matter if you're 3-27 at the end of February. You get this thing called a conference tournament. You get a chance to play your way into the NCAA tournament, and then from there, hypothetically, you can win. Now, after 3-27, you're probably not beating UConn and Kentucky in back-to-back games to win a national championship. You're probably not beating Kentucky and Florida or Florida and Purdue. You get the point. But the point that I'm trying to make is that everyone does have access. Every team in America has access to get into that field of 68 as it is, and then from there, it's on you. You cannot say that about any other sport. If you are a college football team that is 2-7 going into November, there isn't some way you can play your way into the college football playoff. If you're an NFL team, there isn't some way you can play your way into the NFL playoffs if you're 13 going into the final season of the year, final month of the season, excuse me. And so to me, if there was an argument, even again, I go back to what I said a minute ago, even if I hated the idea, if there was a legitimate argument and a legitimate reason to consider it, I would. But there isn't. Teams that are good enough are not getting left out. And the only reason we're interested in expanding is because, as you know, it's a bunch of greedy ADs, greedy conference commissioners, and coaches that don't want to lose their jobs for being mediocre. It's a bunch of coaches that are going 17-15 and finishing 9th in their conference every year that are fighting to expand this thing. By the way, we're going to talk about John Calipari in Arkansas in a second because he had a media availability on Wednesday. But at the same time, Calipari said, don't touch this thing. It's as close to perfect as you can get. And so to me, listen, I only have my little small voice on this podcast. The Greg Sankey and Brett Yormark and Tony Petitti aren't listening to me. But again, go back. Listen, I'll say this really quick, then we got to get to some other stuff. But go back to when we were on the verge of expanding the college football playoff. I think there were a couple people, myself included, that felt like we don't need to expand it. But I would argue the vast majority of media was in favor of it. I haven't seen any media except for Seth Davis, who, let's be honest, I like Seth, but he works for CBS, the main TV partner of the NCAA tournament. I haven't seen a single media member that is advocating for this that thinks it's a good idea. So to me, the fans don't want it. The media who covers the sport is not in favor of this. And again, it's a bunch of dudes that are already rich, ADs, conference commissioners, coaches making too much money to finish 9th in their league that are fighting for this. Fight the good fight. I don't know what to say here. Write your senator, write your congressman. I don't know. Do something. Let's keep this fight going to keep the NCAA tournament from expanding. Again, the sad thing is we're going to get a resolution here soon. My hunch, by the way, I think we're going to get a Friday news dump so nobody has to answer questions. It's going to suck. I hope I'm wrong on this, but I think it's coming. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break. When we do, we're going to go glasses half full. Why is that? It is because we have midsummer college hoops media availabilities. That's a great thing. I was at one earlier in the day. Plus, John Calipari had one. And I think if you're an Arkansas fan, you should be excited about the season ahead. Let's take a quick break, talk Coach Cal, then we'll talk some Big 12 football media days. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the big pig invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your big pig invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. All right, back. Good to be back. So want to say this. I mentioned this I think it was last week's episode. We were talking about how Kentucky, to its credit, has been having media availability every week with its players. I think it is a great thing for college basketball. And I want to go ahead and give credit to 2 programs in specific that had media availabilities on Wednesday, one of which I was at, one of which I was not. And in just a moment, we will talk about the Arkansas Razorbacks. By the way, really quickly, before we get to Arkansas, before we get to John Calipari and what he said, former Arkansas coach Eric Musselman is now at USC. Did pop by USC for half a second on Wednesday to see Coach Muss's new squad. First of all, I appreciate Coach Muss, his entire staff, for welcoming me in, for welcoming the media in. I'll say this, man. They missed they got a really good squad. But I give USC a ton of credit. They made Coach Muss available to the media. They made 3 players available to the media. They have done this earlier in the summer. And I think it's a great way to keep fans engaged with the season ahead. So thank you to Coach Muss for having me. Thank you to USC Hoops. By the way, Torres got a shout out from the USC official page. Yeah, we're building something special in year 2. I'll tell you this. They looked really, really, really good. Okay. So with that said, I do want to switch gears to another school that had a media availability on Wednesday. That's the Arkansas Razorbacks. And it's funny because I go back to this time last year. First of all, thank you, producer Matt. Quick reminder, follow our Torres on the Hogs page for all your late-breaking Arkansas news. Torres on the Hogs for all your late-breaking Arkansas news. So, want to give I want to, 1, shout out the page. But 2, what I also do want to say is this, is that, I think about this time last year. John Calipari gets the job at Arkansas. And what was interesting about it was just a quiet few months, going into the season. There wasn't a ton on the social media pages. I think John Calipari didn't do a media availability after he took the job until like right before the season. Players were not available, whatever. But I bring it up because on Wednesday, he had the media out. They were allowed to record practice. They were allowed to talk to players. And again, I think 1, it is great for the fans, but 2, I think it speaks to something else. I think John Calipari is very confident about this team. And so what I want to do is, listen, obviously I was at USC, didn't have a chance to get on the private jet and go down to Fayetteville, but I'll give credit to my buddy Curtis Wilkerson. Curtis Wilkerson inside Arkansas was there. And I told Curtis, I texted him on Tuesday night. I said, whatever you put out, I'm talking about on my show. So I want to talk about some of the stuff that Curtis put out and some of the media put out from Arkansas practice, because to me, I think it speaks to a team and a program that is very confident going into the summer and then the offseason and then the season ahead. But then two, as importantly, I think it's just not just confidence. I think the confidence is backed up by a lot of talent. Okay. So a couple things stood out to me. First of all, you can pop up the first tweet, producer Matt, from Curtis Wilkerson. He was speaking with Nick Pringle, one of the new transfers to Arkansas. And Nick Pringle was kind of asked about the team and what he experienced so far, especially in the front court going up against two returnees, Trevin Brazil, and then also on top of that, Malik Ewan. Now, Malik Ewan is not a returnee, so I take that back. So one returnee, one newcomer, but the other big guys on the roster. Here's what he said. He said it's been a battle going against two 6'10 guys with long arms. Iron sharpens iron, okay? So you can sit there and say, what does that mean? It's just a quote, whatever, who cares? What that says to me, I think this is a much deeper and much more physical and probably, frankly, much more talented team than a year ago. You know, I was thinking about this, prepping for the show. When I saw that quote, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of, remember that second round NCAA tournament game a year ago? Arkansas plays St. John's. And if you watch that game, there was just a different level of physicality, toughness, athleticism to that game than any other game to that point in the tournament. Now, maybe by the time we got to Florida, Auburn in the Final Four was a different deal. But I remember watching that game, and then like later in the day, it would be like Drake versus Missouri. And you're like, this isn't even the same sport, okay? And so I bring it up because I think Cal this summer, and I think that quote speaks to it, has built one of his deepest teams in a long time, one of his most athletic teams in a long time, and one of his most talented teams. As Nick Pringle said, that front court, that 4-5 spot is basically 6'10", 6'10", 6'10", and a bunch of dudes that are big, long, and athletic. Trevin Brazil, I thought he played some of the best basketball of his career in the final few weeks of last season after Adu Thero got hurt. Malik Ewan, if you're not familiar with this guy, he's 6'11", 7 feet, came from Florida State, was their second leading scorer, leading rebounder. I think he's going to be a load to handle in the SEC. And then Nick Pringle said himself, like, you know, I get to go against those guys every day. It's only making me better. Nick Pringle's a really good college player in his own right. He's probably going to be the first big guy off the bench. And if he is the first big guy off the bench, that is a team that is going to be physical and tough. And that doesn't even include everybody else on the court. Carter Knox, I expect to make a big jump. Billy Richmond, I expect to make a big jump. And that doesn't even include the backcourt of DJ Wagner, of Darius Acuff, of Malik Thomas, three dudes that can get to the bucket, get their shots, get whatever they want anytime they want. So again, I think if you're an Arkansas fan, I just think when you see them walk out of the tunnel for the first time, that size and athleticism is going to stand out. There was something else that Curtis tweeted out that really stood out to me when I saw him tweet it out. He tweeted, quote, he asked both Trevin Brazil and DJ Wagner, you know, somebody in the media did. I don't know if he specifically asked, but he, you know, the difference between this time last year and this time this year. Okay. And he said they both pointed out the biggest difference between last year and this year is health. Makes a big difference simply having healthy bodies on the floor, building chemistry in the summer. And so when I think about this time last year, and when I think about really the start of the season, obviously things didn't start off well. You know, you lose to Baylor, you lose to Illinois in the out of conference. You start 0-5 in the SEC, I think 1-6 overall. And I'll admit, everybody was negative. Everybody was down on Coach Cal. Everybody was down on Arkansas, and I include myself. I'm not going to run from it. I'm not going to pretend that I didn't say the things that I did. But I think in hindsight, we really undervalue like how many different dudes dealt with different injuries throughout the season. And you sit there and say, like, in hindsight, yeah, they were going to start off slow because they didn't have a healthy roster all summer. They didn't scrimmage most of the summer. And it really took until about, you know, frankly, probably mid to late December before they got some semblance of health. And even then, that was when Boogie Flan went down. And so you think about last year, it's like, yes, they started slow. Yes, it was frustrating to watch if you're an Arkansas fan. It was frustrating to watch for somebody like me who covers this sport on a day-to-day basis. But at the same time, you're like, well, wait a second now. Nelly Davis was basically out all of fall with a wrist injury. Jonas Adu was out most of the fall with an injury himself. Then the season starts. Trevin Brazil hurts his ankle. You know, Big Z got hurt earlier in the year. And it was like by the time they kind of figured things out, it was like mid to late January. It was because they had to keep changing the lineup because of the fact that, again, basically they didn't have the same 8-9 players at any point all season long. And so the fact that they're healthy, the fact that they got enough dudes to go 5-on-5, I think you are going to see a team that is going to be exponentially better to start the season and exponentially more ready to go because they're just going to have more time together. And of course, that's knock on wood, assuming nothing happens between now and the end of summer. But I just bring it up because I think we all last year, and I include myself, underestimated and undervalued just how much the issue of injuries, especially early in the year, really impacted that team. Finally, was one other tweet that I saw that did catch my attention, and that was, Calipari mentioning that they're going to have more media availabilities, and Curtis, who covers the team, is at every media press conference, etc. He said, Coach Cal seems very relaxed, comfortable, and confident with what he has. You can tell he likes this group. Now, I'll add even this, and this just came out right before we went live, so I didn't have a chance to send this to producer Matt, but I thought it was very interesting that Coach Cal actually referenced the schedule as well on top of everything else. So in the media availability, he said, let's see here. In addition to the marquee games already added, he is looking to fill bye games with programs that made the NCAA tournament. And Coach Cal said to the media today, he said, quote, you schedule to your team. That to me tells me everything you need to know. Okay. And I've said this throughout the summer, but I've covered Coach Cal for a long time, and you can tell by his actions if he likes his team or not. Okay. I understand this time last year, not doing a ton of media stuff, not having a ton of players available. It's because everybody was hurt, new program, new team. There was only one returning player. Media didn't, whatever. I'm not, hope didn't sound like I was blaming the media because I'm not. I'm just saying I understand why he made the decisions that he did. But this year, if you got a team you believe in, let the world know. Let those players be available. And like I said to lead the segment, in this NIL portal world, make the players available. It's the right thing to do for a fan base, and it's not just the Arkansas fan base, it's every fan base in college sports that you're asking more out of, more donations, more seat price, whatever it is. Give the fans something and make your players available because, what is the harm in it, okay? And so you can tell Coach Cal is confident just by the fact that he's letting media in, he's letting people behind the curtain. You know what else makes me believe that he is very confident? That last part about the schedule. Now that is something that we have been talking about on this show probably about the last 3 to 4 weeks, okay? Again, I've covered Coach Cal. And the one thing I'll say, I know based on the schedule, like if he really believes in his team or not. Because you look at this schedule, it's bananas, and he ain't hiding from everybody, okay? Listen, the Louisville game, that is something that was scheduled by the league offices. I don't know how much Arkansas really had to do with it, but I'll say this. If ESPN, if the SEC did not believe that Arkansas was going to be good, they would not be sending Louisville to Bud Walton. But beyond that, look at the rest of the schedule. Arkansas is playing Houston, 3-4 days before Christmas in Brooklyn? Arkansas could have gotten another opponent. If Coach Cal just wanted a game in New York before the holidays, Arkansas could have gotten another opponent. They didn't have to get the potential preseason number one team, but I think Cal wants to test his team before SEC play. By the way, they're playing Texas Tech in Dallas. Again, there are ways to challenge your team, and there are certainly opponents that you could find to play you on a neutral court in Dallas that aren't a potential preseason top 10 team coming off an Elite Eight with the preseason Big 12 Player of the Year, I'm almost certain, in JT Toppin. You can find somebody else to play in Dallas. It's clear Coach Cal wanted that competition. I'll say this. I'm not even sure. There was talk of a game at Michigan State. I don't know if that's official yet. But again, it's just the confidence that he has in this team. So I'll say this, man. It's one practice. I'm going to go back and watch film and highlights. It obviously happened just a few hours before we went on air here. But I've been saying since this roster came together, once Carter Knox came back, I think this is a team that is capable of a Final Four, that is capable of a deep tournament run, that is capable of an SEC regular season title. They have the most returning production in the SEC with 2 McDonald's All-Americans, a couple high-level transfers. I think this team is good, and I think based on the fact that Coach Cal let everybody behind the curtain on Wednesday afternoon, that he likes this team as well. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take one more break. We're going to come back. We are going to switch gears to football. Big 12 media days. Big 12's getting a little swag. Coach Cal was getting a little swaggy. Big 12's getting swaggy as well. We'll take a quick break, come back, talk Big 12 media days, Brett Yormark, Scott Frost. Yeah, we got to talk about that. Quick break. Be right back.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and I've told you before, when I'm on the road, when I'm podcasting, sometimes you end up looking like a slob. Look at me, mismatched socks, I'm wearing shorts. What am I doing? The folks at Firebox said, Torres, let's get you some fresh gear to look better when you're on camera. Well, what do you think? This is all part of the spring collection for Firebox. These jeans, perfect when I want to go to games, casual, serious, business casual, you name it. Got the quarter zip, and oh, by the way, we got this perfect zip. This is the perfect spring, summer zip that you can wear when you're out with friends. Maybe it gets a little chilly. Maybe it's a little chilly in the morning. Perfect for all occasions. So this is what I need you to do. If you like what you see, and you should, what I need you to do is visit Firebox.com. That's Firebox.com, F-I-O-B-O-C. By the way, Firebox has a special promo code for listeners of the Aaron Torres pod. Use promo code Torres and get 20% off your purchase. Thank you again to Firebox. By the way, make sure that you're following them on social media at Firebox, F-I-O-B-O-C. Thank you, Firebox.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. We will get to Big 12 Media Days in a second. We got a couple comments on the Arkansas situation. Jason Hodges says, I was just watching our practice film. It's awesome. DJ Wagner had a cuff to practice against. It's such a great point. I should have referenced that even in the last. It's not just playing 5-on-5. It is the amount of talent that you are going against. It'd be one thing if DJ Wagner was back, but he was basically playing against a pseudo walk-on, okay? That ain't what happened. He's playing against – DJ Wagner is playing against a McDonald's All-American who's probably going to be a lottery pick, and Darius Acuff, who's probably going to be a lottery pick, is playing against a third-year player who has played in the SEC for 2 years. You don't think that's going to make both of them better? To what Nick Pringle said, iron sharpens iron. And I think that's an underrated part. I'll give you a quick side story, and then I want to get to Big 12 Media Days. I remember many years ago when Cal was at Kentucky, I did a big story on, this was when I used to write back in the day. I did a big story just kind of interviewing players that had played at Kentucky. And I think at the time it was like, why are all these 5-stars going there to be backups or to whatever, or to play a smaller role they could? And it was like, because you're going to get better. Emmanuel Quickly, who signed a massive NBA deal not long ago. I remember talking to his guy and he was like, dude, you know how much Emmanuel is getting better just by practicing every day? I don't even remember what Emmanuel's final schools were, but he's from Maryland. I think Maryland was in the mix. And I'm not trying to crap on Maryland, but it's like, is he going to get better being the best player at Maryland every single day? Or, practicing against Tyrese Maxey every day? Again, I'm not here to crap on Maryland. I'm just here to say, I think there is something to that. And when Nick Pringle says iron sharpens iron, that was probably actually the point that I should have made. But yeah, man, I'm so excited for that team. Coach Cal, just do us a favor. Kentucky's making their guys available every week. USC, Coach Muss is making their guys available every week. You want to make your guys available more than, September, October? Let's get another media availability here before your practices end this summer. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears, because much as I love talking college hoops in July, it is officially July 9th. It is officially-ish talking season. Now, talking season is really going to get going. College football next week. SEC media days are coming. So we'll hear from Josh Heupel, Kalen DeBoer, Steve Sarkisian, Kirby. I was going to call him Kirby Herbstreit. Great name, by the way, Kirby Herbstreit. Not Kirk Herbstreit. We probably won't hear from Kirk Herbstreit. We will hear from Kirby Smart. So SEC media days are coming. But talking season got going this week. Big 12 media days. I actually give the Big 12 credit. It's a pretty quiet week across sports, so they've kind of made headlines this week. And I want to talk about a few things that have come out of Big 12 media days that have caught my attention. The first one coming straight from the mouth of the commish, Brett Yormark. Okay, so Brett Yormark, I think it's year 3 or 4 of commissioner of the Big 12. I love what he's done with that conference. They refuse to take a back seat. They refuse to play second fiddle to the SEC and the Big Ten. And I think they have a great product in basketball, and I think they have a pretty good product in football. It's easy to forget this. Arizona State probably should have beat Texas in the college football playoff last year. BYU, our Torres on BYU guy is in the private chat here. I still say BYU would have given teams games and would have made things competitive had they made the college football playoff last year. So I think the football product is probably a little bit better than people give it credit for. But at a certain point, it's time to put your money where your mouth is, and it's time to deliver big results. Bring it up because the commission seems to think those are coming. He had a couple very interesting quotes, and this is the one I want to get into. Both quotes are on the screen right now. He told reporters at Big 12 Media Day, quote, "I believe we're the deepest football conference in America. I fully expect the Big 12 to earn multiple college football playoff bids this year." I got some thoughts on that, so let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so first of all, let's start with the deepest conference comment. Listen, I think I am probably I don't think I'm an SEC homer. I think I'm an SEC realist. I thought last year, I didn't think Bama was a playoff team. Whatever, it doesn't really matter. I will say this, though. Whatever you think of the SEC, it is the deepest conference in college football still. And I think you got to look at depth from two different perspectives. I think if we're actually talking about the deepest conference in college football, it is the SEC. Pretty much anybody can beat anybody else on any given Saturday. That's not even my opinion. That's just a fact. Vandy beat Alabama last year. Arkansas beat Tennessee last year. Kentucky beat Ole Miss last year. So just about anybody can beat anybody else. And that, to me, makes the SEC the deepest conference. Now, what I will say, if you want to look at depth from a different perspective, I do think the Big 12 probably has the most teams that are capable of actually winning the league, more so than any other conference in college football. Okay, the ACC, as far as I'm concerned, is a one-team league this year. I think it's Clemson and then a big gap between everybody else. The SEC, I do think those top 3 to 4 have probably separated. The Big Ten, certainly you would say the same. But I just bring it up because you look at the Big 12, I think there's 7 teams that I think you could say could realistically win it. I think it starts with Arizona State, the defending champ. Sam Levitt's back. Some of their best skill position guys are back. They do lose Cam Scatterbo, but it doesn't change the fact that really well coached. I remember saying this with the college football playoff last year. Kenny Dillingham's like an old soul in a young guy's body. Play good defense, fundamental, take care of the football, whatever. So Arizona State's in the mix. Iowa State won 11 games last year, beat Miami in a bowl game, return Rocco Becht, return a ton of talent. They should be really good. Kansas State, I'm not an Avery Johnson guy. I think Kansas State is a little bit overrated because of him. But is it crazy to think they could win the league? I don't think so. BYU, I don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation. Jake Retzlaff, as of the last I checked, is still not in the portal. They got talent everywhere else. They got to figure out what's going on at the quarterback. But, I don't think it's inconceivable that they could win. Baylor, by the way, won its final 6 regular season games last year. Who am I missing? Texas Tech. Spending money like it's going out of style. In the Big 12 right now, they kind of took advantage of that window where there was no real cap on spending. And so I just bring it up because you go through all these teams. Colorado, by the way, coming off a 9-win season. No, they lost Shedeur Sanders, but everybody tells me Shedor's overrated. So how much of a drop will they have? We talked about Colorado on last week's show. I'll say this might be the minority. I don't think it's crazy to think Utah could compete at the top. Utah's last 2 seasons have been derailed by not having a quarterback. Well, they got Devin Dampier out of the portal. Point I'm trying to make, deepest group of teams that could potentially win the league in college football. So are they the deepest? I don't think so. Are they the deepest group of teams that could hypothetically win? Yes, I believe they are. With that said, let's dive into the second part of, are we going to have 2 teams in the college football playoff from the Big 12? Don't think it's going to, I don't even know. I don't want to say I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's freaking July 9th. I think it's way too early to even speculate about that. But I think a few things have to go their way. And that's assuming, by the way, that we don't get some weird scenario like the ACC last year. If you remember in the ACC, SMU basically went into the ACC championship game. The committee had already said that if you're in position to get in at large, we're not going to punish you if you don't win a conference championship game. So basically, SMU was in either way, and then Clemson would not have been in, but got in, of course, because they won the ACC championship. So The only reason I bring it up is because you could have a scenario where Arizona State's 12-0 and they're playing Texas Tech, who's 9-3. Texas Tech is on the outside looking in. They get in. Arizona State gets in as an at-large, whatever. So I'm just saying that is the most likely scenario. But what would actually have to happen for the Big 12 to get that to get two teams and including an at-large? I think, first of all, you got to win all of the out-of-conference games that matter. And, it kind of sucks. I was looking at schedules today. The Big 12 doesn't have a ton of super marquee out-of-conference games that they could really hang their hat on. Nobody's playing at Alabama. Nobody's playing Ohio State on a neutral. Nobody's playing at Tennessee. But the games that you do have, you got to win. Baylor opens at home against the Auburn Tigers. Cover your ears, producer Matt. Cover your ears. Big 12 wants to be taken seriously. Like, I'm not even trying to be a jerk. I actually think Auburn's going to be good this year. You got to win. If you want to be taken seriously as a conference Big 12, that's a game you got to win. I'm sorry. Auburn, even I think producer Matt, throw it in the chat. What is a realistic finishing point for Auburn? Like 6th in the SEC, 7th in the SEC? The point I'm trying to make is you got to win that game at home if you're Baylor. Arizona State goes to Mississippi State. You are not a serious conference if your best team cannot beat Mississippi State on the road. So producer Matt says 5th to 7th for Auburn is the best case scenario. I tend to agree. Well, if you're a serious conference, Big 12, win that game at home. It's what is it on a Friday night? It's going to be 2,000 degrees on the field in Waco. Win that game. I just mentioned what was the game that I just mentioned? Arizona State. You have to win at Mississippi State. Serious program. Take care of business. Do what you got to do. Iowa State plays Iowa early in the year. You got to win that game. You got to win that Cy-Hawk Trophy. Kind of matters. Got to win that one. Colorado plays Georgia Tech early. Colorado, win that game at home. You're at altitude. Georgia Tech's flying across country. You got to win these games. These are the games that matter. And then beyond that, I think the other thing that's interesting with the Big 12 is that this is where the depth comes back to bite them, and where I think it came back to bite them last year. Is we talked off the top about the difference between depth of just teams overall and then depth of teams that can actually win the conference. And I bring it up because having 6-7 teams that can realistically win the conference in theory is a good thing, but it becomes a bad thing when they all start to beat each other, right? And so you want to get 2 teams in. You can't have that 6, 7, 8 teams all beating each other up. You can't have Arizona State beating this team on this night and then losing that team on that night. You can't have Texas Tech winning. You gotta have a couple teams separate themselves. And I think the other thing is you can't have teams take bad losses, right? One, it's in the out of conference, it's in the non-conference. Is like, for example, I'll give you an example. Iowa State, we referenced them. We referenced them playing Iowa State or playing Iowa early in the year. Can't lose to Iowa. But if you lose to Kansas State in week 0, that's not great for the league either, because then you're 1-1. You got this great out of conference win, but you're already behind the 8 ball in the league standings. It's not a knock on Kansas State. That's just the reality. You got to take care of the games out of conference, but then you got to take care of the games in conference too, right? So if you're Arizona State, you play Texas Tech at home. You play Rich Rod in West Virginia. Those are games that you have to win in conference. You can't take weird losses. Iowa State, if they get by Kansas State and Iowa, you can't go into October and then lose at Colorado, lose to Kansas in a weird game. So I'm just saying, I do think 2 teams are in play. And by the way, you got to have some luck along the way too. You got to hope the SEC beats each other up. You got to hope the Big Ten beats each other up. And then your teams have to take care of business. I think, to me, it's really those big out of conference games. Baylor's got to beat Auburn. Arizona State certainly cannot lose to Mississippi State unless maybe Arizona State's just not good. And then everybody else has to take care of business. I'll say this. It'll be interesting. I think the first AP poll comes out in a week or 2. I think we're going to have like 5 or 6 Big 12 teams in it. I think they're all going to be bunched, and it's going to be fascinating to see who can take care of business and if teams can separate themselves. Right now, I would say Arizona State is probably the best team for me, but we'll see what happens from there. Really quickly, do want to hit on one other Big 12 topic out of Big 12 Media Days. By the way, Deion Sanders did speak today. I don't think there was anything super interesting. He said there's, Caden Salter and Julian Lewis, the two quarterbacks, are both competing. I thought it was cool he brought them to media days, but I wouldn't say there was like some super significant thing that came out of Deion Sanders, that came out of most of the rest of Big 12 Media Day. There was one exception, though, of things that are worth discussing at Media Day. That guy on your screen right there, Scott Frost, did you see what he said about his home state school, about his alma mater, and probably most importantly, about the place that he once coached, not very successfully, okay? So let's go ahead and dive in. Scott Frost, listen, I've said this on the show a million times. When I was growing up, and I'm old now, Nebraska was kind of what Alabama was, to a different generation, maybe what Ohio State is now in terms of a team that was always relevant, always this, always that. Well, Scott Frost in 2017 is at Central Florida, UCF, leads them to a 13-0 season. Of course, on this show, it always comes back to Auburn. They beat Auburn in the Peach Bowl. Producer Matt, I'm sorry for you to relive that moment in time. But Scott Frost has an incredible year, beats Auburn in the Peach Bowl, and then, of course, goes to Nebraska, his alma mater. Producer Matt calls it fake news. The rest of us remember it for what it was, an incredible moment in an incredible season. By the way, that was also the year that UCF just started claiming a national championship that didn't exist. So that was a fun moment in time for college football, okay? But I bring it up because he leaves Central Florida, goes to Nebraska. It certainly does not go well. 16-31 overall. 3-9 in his last full season. They give him the final year. He goes 1-2 and gets booted in September. And I think in a story that I think, unless you're a college football diehard, you kind of forgot, Scott Frost got hired as the new head coach at Central Florida this year. So again, proving it all comes back to Auburn. Gus Malzahn leaves to take the Florida State offensive coordinator job. UCF opens, and Scott Frost is now again the head coach at UCF. And so, listen, I don't know Scott Frost personally. I've always liked the demeanor. I've always liked the whatever. But he takes the podium at Big 12 Media Days and is asked about the situation at Nebraska. I don't know if Chris Vanini from The Athletic was the one who asked the question, but he was certainly the one who had the tweet that went viral. Scott Frost asked about what he learned at Nebraska. Producer Matt, if you have the tweets, you can pop them up. He said, quote, "What did I learn at Nebraska? Don't take the wrong job. Woof." And then what did he say after that, Producer Matt? He said, quote, "I said I wouldn't leave UCF unless it was someplace you could win a national championship. I got tugged in a direction to try to help my alma mater and didn't really want to do it. It wasn't a good move. I'm lucky to get back to a place where I was a lot happier." Okay. This is, in my opinion, the classic case. I always say it on this show. Two things that are seemingly different can be true at the same time. Maybe Scott Frost didn't really want to leave UCF to go back to Nebraska. But at the same time, there were a lot of reasons that things went wrong for Scott Frost at Nebraska, and zero of them had to do with it being the wrong job. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. First of all, again, I'm not claiming that I know Scott Frost. I do think it was a tough decision for him. If you remember that time, 2017 was kind of a wild offseason because the Florida job opened. Remember, it was Scott Frost and Chip Kelly were believed to be the favorites there. Chip Kelly goes to UCLA. Scott Frost goes to Nebraska. Dan Mullen gets that job. But it was a real thing of like, is Scott Frost going to go to Florida? Is he going to go to Nebraska? Is he going to stay at UCF? And it really wasn't until a day or two before the AAC championship game that it actually leaked that he was going to take the Nebraska job. And if you remember at the time, and we just referenced it, he actually took the Nebraska job, recruited for Nebraska, then came back and coached UCF in the Peach Bowl. I thought it was a really cool thing to do in that moment. I think he really felt like, I love these kids. I love this school. Again, maybe he did not want to really leave. And again, I thought it was cool that he kind of decided, you know what, I'm going to come back. I'm going to coach this team. I want to finish what I started. And he did it, and UCF ended up winning that game. So I could see the scenario where he's sitting there saying, you know what, I really didn't want to leave. Maybe I shouldn't have. I was pulled in a different direction. Maybe I should just stay. Okay. That can be true. What can also be true is what I just said a second ago. Just because things did not go well at Nebraska, it's not all Nebraska's fault. As a matter of fact, I would say most of it was not Nebraska's fault. And I'll say this. if we're taking a blame pie of what went wrong at Nebraska, I would say the vast majority of it, I would say probably falls on Scott Frost's fingers, on his shoulders, excuse me. So first off, let's credit Nebraska, okay? Because they gave that guy every chance to succeed. Through 4 years, things were not going well. If you remember, the second to last year was, I will not lie, it was one of the wildest seasons that I have ever seen. Nebraska finishes 3-9 in Scott Frost's second to last year. They lost 8 of those games by a touchdown or less. Nebraska fans, if you're watching, I'm so sorry that we're reliving this, but it's important context, right? I remember watching those games because, again, as a child of the 90s, I want Nebraska to be good. And so you're watching every single week. Can they figure out a way? They lose to Illinois in week 1. I think it was actually week 0, but you get the point. They played Oklahoma at Oklahoma. This was peak Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. Barely lose that game. They lose in overtime to Michigan State because they gave up a punt return with like 3 minutes to go to tie the game and force overtime. They barely lose to Michigan 32-29. That was the first of 3 straight years Michigan won the Big Ten. That was the first of 3 years they made the college football playoff. That was the year they lost to Georgia. Doesn't really matter, but they lost to the Big Ten champion by 3 points, okay? And so you go through the season. By the way, the only game that they did not lose by a touchdown or less was Ohio State. They lose 26-17. Remember watching that game. They had a chance to take the lead late in the fourth quarter. I think they were down 3, go for a touchdown. Adrian Martinez, in the way that only he could, missed a wide open pass. Ohio State comes down and scores, game over. Okay. So I just bring it up because you can't say that it was the wrong job when you kept losing games. And then, despite all that, Nebraska, because he was an alum, gave him the benefit of the doubt, said, you know what? We're going to give you another offseason. You're losing all these close games. Maybe you can turn around. Then what happens? Going into the next year, week 0, you lose in Ireland to Northwestern. Remember that game? Weird, onside kick at the worst possible time. Northwestern gets momentum. You lose that game. How about this? Northwestern did not win a game the rest of the season. They went 1-11. Their only win was in week 0. Their only win was before the season started against Scott Frost in Nebraska. Then you come back, you beat North Dakota. Congrats on that FCS win. And you lose to Georgia Southern. And that was the game that Scott Frost got fired. And so you got the extra year. You got every benefit of the doubt. And even if, by the way, I understand that in the NIL portal world, it's easier to flip a roster and do all that. But you can't say you didn't have enough time. You can't say it wasn't the right place. You can't say you weren't given every opportunity. And you can't say that a lot doesn't fall on your shoulders. When you go in your final 2 seasons, season and a quarter before you get fired, when you go, what is that, 4-10, 4-11, and of those 11 games, you lose 10 by 1 score, at a certain point, that does kind of fall on the coach, does it not? Oh, by the way, let's not forget, again, weird onside kick. You lose in overtime to Michigan State on a punt return because you don't have a special teams coach. These are all things I remember talking about in the moment. You lose to Georgia Southern. That's not a job thing. That's a Scott Frost thing. Scott Frost can't be losing to Georgia Southern because Nebraska should never be losing to Georgia Southern, okay? So that's that. I don't buy it. And here's the other thing. A lot of the stuff was self-inflicted. There were NCAA violations during COVID. Again, no special teams coach, and you lose because of special teams plays. It was kind of a train wreck, okay? And while we're on the subject of train wrecks, I'll be very delicate in how I say this. But if you are to believe rumors, let's just say that, maybe Scott Frost, how do I say this? There were some things that I think in hindsight he could have done differently in terms of how he spent his free time and who he spent it with. Listen, it's all speculation, but I'll say this. Lincoln's a reasonably sized town. I've been there. Great Golden Corral from what I remember when I was there. Great Golden Corral. But there's enough people that can corroborate, again, that maybe Scott Frost was a little loose with his free time, that maybe he was in places that he shouldn't have been as the head coach of Nebraska, with people he shouldn't have been with. There are reports and rumors about maybe he missed a meeting with Dylan Raiola when Dylan Raiola was the number one quarterback in America, and his uncle and father both have Nebraska ties. I think his uncle was even on the staff at that time, about why Scott Frost missed that meeting. So I'm not going to speculate on that. I'll let you kind of go down that internet, Twitter, Google rabbit hole. But again, as weird as it sounds, I'll just say it. Like, I'm wishing Scott Frost luck because I think, everyone deserves a second chance. Maybe Nebraska wasn't for him. And I'm certainly wishing Nebraska luck because I think it's like that cliche, is college football better with Nebraska being good? I actually think it is. I actually think that it is. So yeah, don't know what else there is to add other than to say that Scott Frost, there's a lot of blame to go around, but a lot of it falls on you, my man. All right, I'll tell you what, a little bit of a quieter Wednesday show. Chat was quiet, but I get it. It's Wednesday. It's the middle of the summer. You guys got all sorts of things going on, but we're going to go ahead and get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube, make sure to do so. You can click subscribe. We got shows going on. By the way, I think I have another very good interview coming up in the coming days, so make sure you're tuned in for that. If you're not subscribed, though, make sure to do so. If you're not subscribed, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, make sure to do so there. Also, make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com, Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All for today's show. I will be back maybe on Thursday. We'll see what pops up. Shout out to Torrin Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, UF Head. Unblock me, bro. I'll be back probably Thursday. New episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. Appreciate you. Chat then.